see. Okay. Good morning, guys. So we are having lecture today with also the need to talk about. Oh wait. Sorry. Sorry.
You are mute, Professor.
How about that?
Now it's
Can you
good.
you guys can hear me? Okay, good. Some technical problem. Yeah, I solved. Okay, I solved it. Okay, good. Lovely. Sorry. Last week we have talked about we're talking about the ideas of Foucault, and we finished Heidegger, and both Foucault and Heidegger, although they claimed, although they especially Foucault doesn't claim is himself to be a philosopher, but they both are doing philosophy in a sense by doing history. Okay, they emphasize on the importance of history, but how is it important? They focus on different perspective. Um, when Heidegger offers us a very grand picture, talking about how history determining the worldview of us, Foucault gives some very precise example in history and to illustrate how that is possibly very important in shaping how we see the world. And that's the idea. And that's why they, in a sense, they are complementary to each other because although they also have some disagreement, okay, but from a very grand perspective, some larger perspective, they are both emphasizing the importance of history, and that when we relate to our course, show how what creativity could be. Okay, I always try to show through I always want to show you that creativity can have two sides. That's one of the main thread of our course. Okay, that means when we seeing the role of creativity in history, that will show us more how creativity becomes so important. Okay, because when you get to some very fundamental level, creativity can help us to, so to speak, to escape from in a sense, from the control of history. Of course, it's not possible. Okay, we are a historical being. Okay, we are a historical creature. Okay, even the exercise of our creativity to escape from the influence and from the grasp of history upon us is also a historical product. Okay, maybe we need to like wait upon certain moment in history, such that the momentum is large enough, and then suddenly we can like create something that can help us to change from one historical era to another. But even so, okay, I've never denied that's the case. Okay, we are historical being, and even for any creativity breakthrough, okay, creativity that is like creative enough that could help us to escape or to change the historical era, to change our worldview. Um, that is also in a sense dependent on history. But at least I want to show through the larger picture so that you can understand, okay, the whole interplay between creativity and and history, okay, and our worldview, okay, because in a lot of different courses when we talk about creativity, it seems creativity has no history. It seems creativity has nothing to do with history, but that's not the case. When you have a bigger view upon this issue, you see how history try to get hold on us, and then you can see how creativity, in certain sense, could help us to escape from that hole. Of course, as I emphasize, some some creativity, okay, some creative thinking, uh, is on the other hand, uh, helping the current railroad, the old railroad to consolidate itself. So that's another kind of creativity. Okay, that's not that's a creation, so to speak, within a creativity production within a worldview, instead of a creativity that help us to get out of the current or old worldview. So that's totally different. Okay, and that help us. I want that help us set straight the agenda. Okay, when we got to the next topic, or the next topic, when we try to analyze, we will try really try to analyze some, okay, some production of our cultural industry, okay, our creative industry, the 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 TV shows, the movies, the songs, uh, the comics, for example, all those products of our creative industry are actually can be analyzed from that perspective. Okay, what kind of creativity it is using, it is presupposing, and how it interact with our current worldview. Okay, are we doing are we doing a job of consolidation of some current system, or are we like trying to challenging the current system and take us to some new stage of history? Okay, that's totally different. Okay, and that's why I want to show through the how that happens. Okay, um, so let's get back to Foucault. Okay, last week, I talked about the so to speak three academic periods of Foucault's thought. Okay, the first stage, which I finished last week, is about archaeology. Okay, archaeology, just like digging into the ground, and you see different period of time within under the ground. Okay, but of course, Foucault is not trying to dig the so to speak the real ground. Okay, the real soil, but our the soil of our conceptual history. Okay, so he tries to dig into our conceptual history and see the different prioritization of our conceptual system. Okay, when he's talking about archaeology, he's emphasizing on the discontinuation between different periods of time in our conceptual history. Okay, just like when I talk about, I use the example of madness. Okay, madness. In Middle Age or in early modern period, and in now at the current nowadays moment, how we see madness. Okay, how we see madman. Is totally different. Okay, our view varied a lot across different period of time. And when we talk about the meaning of madness, what madness is, and how can we conceive madness, um, we have to like relativize to different period of time, and we have to say relative to or with respect to which conceptual system we are talking. Then we can talk about the meaning of madness. Okay, so that's what Foucault called the episteme. Okay, episteme, which is originally a Greek word, but later on he adopts it into his idea, and that word means framework of knowledge actually. Okay, some background framework of knowledge, so that when we talk about a particular concept, we have to with reference to some background, some framework of knowledge behind the scene. Okay, which is not so easy. So which is not easy to be notified. Okay, it's not easy to see there's such kind of framework of knowledge operating behind our thinking. Okay, behind the scene. But that's the case. Okay, but that's the case. And what Foucault did in his archaeological period is trying to show through that that kind of episteme, that kinds of framework of knowledge works behind our thinking in ordinary life, because thinking seems to be so common, so easy, such an everyday thing. So you won't notice there is such a large conceptual system working behind the scene. And but when we see that is such a framework of knowledge behind the scene, then you suddenly notify our use of concepts is not, in a sense, it's not absolute. Okay, we have to understand our current usage of a particular concept is not the king. Okay, it's not the only answer to the issue. Okay, in that sense, that's important to see, to lose grip, okay, of our current system. Okay, we don't need to like hold the current system so tightly, such that we cannot see things from other perspective. All along, Foucault is doing a project of, so to speak, liberation or emancipation. Okay, 解放, okay, in Cantonese, 解放, okay, in Mandarin. Okay, try to free you from some unnecessary holding of our history. Okay, before maybe because we can see things only from our current system, our current worldview, so we won't discover or that actually we can have other possibilities. But then by doing that kind of archaeology, of course, in terms of our conceptual history, Foucault wants us to like understand or to suddenly discovered that actually the current system is just one of the system. Okay, is a portrait of our human history, and so we don't need to like hold our current system so tight. Okay, in that sense, that is like his idea, and why he used that to talk about the idea of madness. Okay, but then we move in our tutorial to the second period of Foucault, that is genealogy. I have to say that that idea of genealogy is, I think, even more influential, okay, than his idea of archaeology. And I think that is more convincing, okay, and more powerful than his archaeology. Of course, Foucault says he never changed his project. Okay, in a sense, yes. Okay, because all along he is just using different methodology to try to achieve his project of emancipation, 解放, okay, to liberation, to free you from some unnecessary limit of our thoughts, okay, but and so he thinks he just used different methodology to deal with different problem at hand, okay, according to the lead of the study. But I would say genealogy got like more influence, and I think it's more powerful. I think it's more powerful because there is some limitation to the study of archaeology. Um, but anyway, we can skip that first, okay? And step into the view, the idea of genealogy first, okay? When we talk about archaeology, uh, Foucault focuses on the discontinuity of the meaning of concepts, okay? Uh, but in genealogy, he does something opposite, okay? He focuses on the continuous history of concepts when we talk about genealogy, okay? In tutorial, I try to explain using the metaphor of a tree, okay? And that's what the author of our reading, okay, taught me, okay, also uses. Okay, the metaphor of family tree. Genealogy means the idea to trace back one's origin, okay, by tracing back all the lies within your families. Okay, so we can draw a family tree, okay, to show which one is your this is your father, your mother, or your parents, and then the parents got their parents, and then the parents of parents got the parents of the parents of the parents. Okay, so we can draw a very large family tree, and the focus is on you. Okay, for example, if I want to have a genealogy of you, then it means that I try to trace back in history how you become you, okay? Because you become who you are because you get your parents, and your parents become who they are because they got their parents, okay? So I can trace the line along the family tree, and then we can tell a story about how you come to exist, okay? And that explains your existence. That's the idea of a family tree, right? But then Foucault used the same idea, of course. The idea of genealogy actually was used in the history of philosophy first by a very famous German philosopher, Nietzsche, okay, Nietzsche, okay, Nietzsche. And Nietzsche used the idea of genealogy to talk about morality, okay. Foucault, of course, learned quite a lot from Nietzsche, but that but they use the methodology of genealogy in totally different way. Okay, and in Foucault's hands, he tried to use the idea of like the metaphor of family tree, to analyze how we got to like have some concepts of our current worldview. For example, he tries to stick to one particular concept and then try to trace back in our history, in the history of us of ours, and to see how that concept develop, okay, along the lines of history, okay, in the course of history, how the concept become what we are using nowadays, okay, or even to try to explain how one particular modern concepts come to exist in history, because a lot of concepts uh, didn't didn't exist, okay, in the past, or maybe they existed, but they had totally different meaning. And Foucault tried to trace back from now to the past how some current concepts came to exist, or how some current concepts came to have their current meaning within our current system. Okay, so he tries to like trace back in the history of ours and see how those concepts develop itself. Okay, according to so Foucault will try to like tell a lot of different stories of histories. Okay, some very, very detailed stories actually. And for Foucault, he believed that 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 uh, we often regard certain things and thoughts as necessary, but he always questions, okay, all those things that we regard that we are regarded that we regard as necessary. He always questions whether they're really that necessary. Okay, are we? Is it a must? Okay, is it a must that we see things from that perspective? Can we change the perspective? Can we change our worldview? Are our current worldviews that necessary? Okay, that absolute. And Foucault thinks a lot of things are just contingent. Okay, but we falsely regard them as necessary, and that's the problem. That limit the freedom of our thoughts, that limit the freedom of how we see the world, how we see ourselves, and and thus enhance limit how we can act, how we can behave. Okay, that is a huge limitation for us, and actually that will also impose pressure on other people, and that causes oppression. Okay, okay, oppression. Okay, we oppress other people that who do not see things from the same perspective of ours, who do not see things using the same worldview as ours, and that's just a very huge limitation, not only on us but also on other people, and that cause harm, that will hurt them. Okay, that causes oppression. Okay, and so Foucault's project all along since archaeology, but even more so in his period of genealogy, is trying to let us see that a lot of things are actually not that necessary. Okay, we can like it's not that absolute. Okay, it's not that absolute. And and so when Foucault talk about his idea of genealogy, he will always imply or presupposes some very important principles when he does when he did his like study in genealogy. The first thing that he want to emphasize is that there's no one single origin for all those ideas or concepts. Okay, he thinks as always, when we have some current some worldview, some concepts, all those concepts and worldviews uh didn't just come from one single source. Okay, history are is very complicated. Okay, there are a lot of different lies of happenings, of events, of things happened in the past in history. A lot of different lies of influence, different lies of cause and effect, and just a lot of different things happening at the same time. Okay, or different at different times. And but that's important because when things come along, okay, different lies of cause and effect will come together and effect and have certain effect together. Okay, and that may give rise to our current worldview. Okay, that's the idea. So Foucault never tried to explain things just from one very 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 overwhelming a source of origin. Okay, someone would say, okay, for example, if you are a Marxist, okay, 马克思主义者 Marxist, then you might think of, for example, class struggle, okay, the struggle between different classes, okay, 階級鬥爭, 階級鬥爭, okay, 階級鬥爭 is the source of all the development of human history. Okay, Marx tried to have a one-way explanation for history, for all those things, for all those concepts that we're using. Why we use current worldview? Because we are in some particular stage of history. Why we are in that history? Or because ultimately it is the class struggle between different classes that pushes into the current stage of history. Okay, and so that class struggle will explain everything. Okay, from music to academic to philosophy. Okay, from religion to politics. Okay, we got a single source that can like explain things to us. Okay, but that's not what Foucault does in his study. He always think that's a wrong approach. Okay, that's wrong. That's not correct. Human history is much more complicated than that. Okay, we don't have a single source to explain everything in history, and we don't have a single line of cause and effect that give rise to our current worldview. Okay, we got a lot of different lies. Okay, a lot of different things that is totally unrelated in a sense, but suddenly they may come together in some particular point of time in history, and that have some very important effect and give rise to something important. That's the idea. So he will go into some very the very details of events in history, and to explain how that contribute to the happening or the existence of something. Okay, and another important point to look is that Foucault always emphasize on the history of ours and not the history of mine. Okay, so individual, of course, is some very important entrance point for us to start our study. Okay, but at the end of the day, Foucault always wants to like do a common history. Okay, he's talking about a history of we. Okay, it's not of I. Okay, of course, the we is composed of a lot of different I's. Okay, that's true, but the emphasis all along is on the we, and and that is of course in a sense normal for Foucault because he thinks we share a common history. Okay, and that's why we share some worldview in our community, in our society. Okay, we inherit the same set of worldviews from our common ancestor. Okay, and that's why when we talk about history, we are talking about the history of like a community or a history of ours, not just my history, but our history together, and that shape the worldview of our society. Okay, um, and that's what Foucault did. Okay, because he tried to analyze the Western history in a sense, how Western civilization becomes. Okay, what it looked like in Foucault's time. And so he is doing a historical study on the Western thoughts, okay, the Western worldview, okay. So let's get into one particular study of Foucault, okay, discipline and punish. This is also the name of the very famous book from Foucault, okay, discipline and punish. Of course, his book also got a subtitle. That's the birth of of present. Okay, the birth of prison. Okay, prison. How the jails. Okay, how the prison came to existence. Okay. So in this book, of course, the main idea is talking about discipline and punish, but at the same time, you also try to show to the history of the birth of prison, how the current prison came to existence. And that's what he talks about in his book, in his famous book. Um, let's start from discipline. We often think discipline is important nowadays, right? I remember particularly in some when we in some social movement, a lot of criticism come from the fact that people just can't bear with a society without discipline, without order. Okay, people are just people just like order and discipline. Okay, a disciplined society is always regarded as a good society. Okay, but how come? Okay, why discipline is so important? Okay, in our current worldview, it seems, especially in Hong Kong or in some particular city and country, discipline seems to have some holy status. Okay, you can't like you can't just like harm the discipline of a society. That's totally unacceptable. And when you do something that's not disciplined, that's against the order of the society, then you suddenly feel, oh, that's very like, how come? Okay, I can't bear with it. Now you got the feeling that even though maybe you support the movement, but you still have some uncomfortable feelings. Okay, and how that happened? Why discipline becomes so important? Okay, in our current worldview, how that come to existence? Okay, and that's the study initiated by Foucault. Okay, and carried on by a lot of different scholars on the study of the history of discipline. And when we talk about discipline, of course we have to talk about punishment. Okay, and that's why discipline and punishment is like, okay, the two important concepts in his book. That's why Foucault tried to try to do a study. I try to conduct a study on this topic, because of course Foucault is doing a historical study, but the main focus and the purpose of Foucault's historical study is not to understand the past actually. Okay, if you understand what I have been talking about throughout these two lectures, you understand that Foucault's main purpose is to understand the present. Okay, this moment. Okay, the present. He's not trying to understand the past. Of course, he tries to understand the past by doing a lot of history or historical studies, but the ultimate focus or the ultimate purpose, okay, is to understand the present. It's not to understand the past. It's the present. Okay, this moment. How we see the world from this perspective now. Okay, to understand our current society. Okay, not the society in the past. Of course, most of his study is about the past, but the purpose is not about the past. The purpose is actually about the present, and that's a very, I think, very like eye-opening and inspiring idea. Okay, so he tried to dig into the history. Okay, to talk to find how the idea of discipline like evolve. Okay, into our current ideas. And actually, if Foucault found that there are some quite different lines of influence that come together suddenly and give rise to our current disciplined society. Now, for example, some very like contingent stuff in history that could be the case that it never happens. Okay, it could be the case that it never happens, but as a matter of historical facts, that happened. Okay, and because that has happened, and that caused something, in history, but that's totally contingent in this sense. Okay, that's not necessary. Okay, it's not something very special that it would necessarily happen. No, that's just some accidental contingent things. Okay, for example, the timetable of monastery. Okay, how come our society becomes so disciplined? Okay, one of the cause that give rise to our disciplined society is, come on, how monastery in Middle Age or in early modern period try to arrange the life of their priests, okay, according to a very strict timetable. And well, you can never imagine that that is a very important thing, right? It could be the case that monastery organized the life of their priests in a totally different manner, right? It's not necessarily the case that it control and organize the lives in monastery according to a very strict timetable, a very strict schedule. But that was the case in history. But there's nothing special, right? It's understandable. It's common, it's normal, okay, that the monastery opts for this way of arrangement. But that choice, okay, at the end of the day, will give rise to something very big, okay, okay. But at the beginning, they were just trying to think about how they should how they should organize the lives in monastery, okay. But that at the end of the day have some very huge effect. Another source, okay, another source that is also very contingent, okay, in our history that at the end of the day give rise to our current disciplined society is how the Prussian armies trains themselves. Okay, how Prussia trains its army. Prussia, you guys know Prussia, right? Prussia is one of the kingdom uh before the unification of Germany. Okay, it based on its base is in Potsdam, a city near Berlin. Okay, and so it's in the so to speak eastern part, okay, of Germany nowadays. Okay, but not in the past, right? Because in the past Germany is much larger before the Second World War. But anyway, um, Prussia trained its army according to some a very disciplined instruction. Okay, a very strict requirement, and that's not the case in other armies. Okay, Prussia is famous for that. Prussia is famous for that. No, and that's why even the when the Chinese army try to modernize itself and to learn how the soldiers were trained in in the European countries, European powerhouse houses at that time. They also learned how Prussia trained their army or how Germany trained their army. Okay, uh, the Chinese people and Japanese people the same. Okay, when they try to learn how to modernize their armies, Prussia became a very important source of reference for them. Okay, especially when they consider how to train their how to say army, not the navy but the army. Okay, okay. So that's contingent, right? That's contingent. We could have other ways to train our army, but Prussia decided to train their army according to that, and then that practice later on get into the wider society and get to other country because other country also try to learn how Prussia trains their army, and then that kind of discipline later on have a very huge impact on 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 the wider society, and that's unthinkable when the Prussia generals try to impose that training method into their armies. Okay, that's not their purpose. But at the end, they have such an effect. That's how things happen in history. That's very magical in a sense. Okay, and then another contingent things. Okay, but of course this is much larger, much more important. The rise of capitalism. Okay, the rise of capitalism. Okay, capitalism came to existence like in the let's say 17th or 18th century. Okay, and that had some very like huge impact on a lot of different things, in including how we see discipline and punishment. Okay, that's strange. Okay, actually, when Foucault started his book, okay, Discipline and Punish, he tried to describe a case of a criminals whose name is Damien in 1757. Okay, 1757. That case is try to show how punishment was carried out before the modern system. Okay, for example, Damien as a criminal was punished very like gruesomely. Okay, in a very terrible manner. Okay, in the public square. Okay, they try to like peel off his skin, try to impose as much pain as possible onto Damien's body. Okay, until his death. Okay, until he dies. But that's very gruesome, very terrible. And it seems there is some progress in our history of punishment. Okay, we try to become quote unquote more civilized, and it seems to be the case that we treasure human lives more. We found that it is not good to control or to punish people to that level of terror, impose such kind of pain, and we did in public. Okay, all of these are like just terrible, just bad. So we try to change how we punish people, and we like set up some jails to lock them up. That seems to be better. Um, but actually, Foucault tried to point out that's not the truth. Okay, that's not the truth. Maybe we got some progress in punishment. Okay, we did it. We do it now in a better way that impose not that much unnecessary pain onto the criminals. But Foucault wants to say it is not out of humanitarian concern. Okay, in the past it seems the traditional story is that okay we found out that it's not good, it's bad, and that's why out of humanitarian concern, okay, the concerns for humanity, okay, that's why we change how we punish people in our society. But Foucault says it's not the case. We change our system not out of humanitarian concern, but out of other concern. Okay, for example, because the rise of capitalism, we have a lead for large jails. Why? Why we suddenly have such a lead? It is because in the past we can like bear with a lot of small crimes, okay, so to speak. When someone tries to steal, we won't punish them, maybe. Or when we try to punish them, we do it in a very gruesome and very terrible way. But before that, uh, it's okay to we'll bear with some sort of petty crime, okay, some small crimes, okay. But that couldn't be the case anymore upon the rise of capitalism, because protecting private property suddenly become a very important issue. Okay, because capitalism, right? And because capitalism is a very the, the cornerstone of capitalism uh, is exactly the protection for private property. Okay, private ownership, the property right. Okay, we have on our private property is the cornerstone for capitalism. If we cannot protect one's private property, then we cannot talk about capitalism, right? So when capitalism become the system, then suddenly we will have to punish all those people who infringe the right of our private property. Okay, we have right over our private property. We can decide how it should be used. We can decide to whom I I I I want to give. Okay, that's the right of us. Okay, of ours. And and when someone infringes our right to our private property, we have to punish them. Otherwise, we cannot maintain the operation of a capitalistic society. And that's why if we have to lock up everyone who try to steal, who for example, who harm my property right, then we have to lock them up, okay? And locking them, and first because it's such a small crime, we cannot use the old method to have some very terrible treatment on the criminals in public square. Okay, that's not proportional, and that will induce the unwelcoming feeling of the people towards the government or towards the king at that time. And that's why the government chooses to do something else. Let's not punish people to that extent in public. Okay, let's do it. Okay, by setting up some jails, prisons, and lock them up. It seems to be a better treatment for the people, for the criminals, and for the society. And so the race of capitalism is very important. Very important. Huh? We suddenly have a need for large jails, and then at the end of the day, because a lot of people have to be locked up. Okay, so we have to set up some very large jails. Okay, in the past we also have jails and prisons, but if you go to Europe, okay, if you go traveling around Europe, you will see. Did you know where the criminals is locked up in the past? Okay, they are locked up like in the castle, okay, of the kings. Okay, always the case. So where the king lives, they they also have a castle, a prison there to lock criminals up. So that's some very strange ideas from the Chinese perspective. How come you lock people up within your monastery, your palace or your castle? But that's exactly the case, and how things were organized in the past in Europe. And so they also had jails before the rise of capitalism. Okay, but the case is they don't have such kind of jail. Okay, to that scale. Okay, such a jail of large scale is non exist. Is not exist. Didn't exist in the past. Okay, because they don't have the lead to lock up so many people. Okay, they just didn't have the lead before the coming of capitalism. Okay, and so that changed a lot of different things. And when we have to lock up so many people, we have to organize many people. Okay, and then we have to develop some technology of controlling people. Okay, that's that kick starts some very new technology. Okay, okay, the management of a very large amount of prisoners, and that's not easy. Okay, and that's not easy. Okay, we'll talk about that more in the second half of the lesson. So maybe let's take a break first. Okay, ask any question in the chat box if you wish. Okay, let's talk about that later. Okay, after the break. Okay, let's take a break first. Hello, guys. Okay, I see. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, good. Thank you. Thanks, Pablo. I got questions from students asking me about the presentation of the project. So uh, let me talk about that now a little bit. We are going to do two things in our course. Oh, actually, three things. Okay, one is take home exam. That's okay, right? So I will talk about that later on. But then we have two other assignments. Okay, one is a group project, and one is supposed to be a presentation. But I have changed a bit. Okay, for that. So let's talk about the presentation first. Okay, the presentation first. Because I want to do more group project at the first, but not nowadays because the pandemic situation of COVID-19. So I changed some arrangement. Okay, so that's the answer now. At the last 2 week of our tutorials. Okay, so that's the last 2 week of April, the last 2 weeks of April. In our tutorial, we will have group presentation period. I want to divide because we got 21 students or 20 students more or less, 21 students. I want to divide our class into 4 different groups. Okay, so more or less 5 to 6 people for one group. Okay, and in the group project, what do you need to do is like you have to do a case study concerning uh, 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 creative industry in Hong Kong. Okay. Um, of course, now I originally I planned to make sure to do some, for example, interviews, investigations, blah 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 blah. Um, Maybe it's not that convenient under the current pandemic situation. Okay, but let's see. Okay, it's still possible. If it's still possible, then of course you guys can still do it. But I can open up the possibility that you just do a case study without doing any first-hand interviews or any in-depth investigation. You can just do some like textual analysis, for example, to replace that first-hand interview. But in any case, I want you to do a case study. You might, for example, try to study for one particular industry or one, for example, one band groups, one particular actor, or one communist, a comicist. Okay, I don't, or one writer is okay. Okay, as long as it's related to the creative industry in Hong Kong. Okay, if you want to do a study on the creative industry of other country, you can also tell me, okay, or other cities, other regions, you can also tell me, okay, I can negotiate, okay. I think it's okay, but my original plan is to conduct a small research on the creative industry in Hong Kong. You can pick a case, okay, or maybe a song, a movie. That's also okay, okay. But I want you to like try to look into how some particular sectors in Hong Kong's creative industry works. Okay, how they operate. Now, I'm now teaching you some tools to conduct analyze. Okay, for example, how powers operate within our society, how some creativity help us to break through the holding of our current history, our past worldview, for example. And I want you to use that kind of tools. Okay, the tools in the first like half of our course. Okay, to analyze the creative industry in Hong Kong. Are they trying to are they successful in, like, for example, liberating people from their older worldview, or Are they just consolidating the current worldview? Are they doing good or bad to the society? And do they have the freedom to do that? Or because of it is still under economic system, under the capitalistic economic system, so they don't have that that room to operate. Maybe they want to, but they don't have the room to operate. Maybe it's like the case. So you may I want you to conduct interviews like that. So you might my original idea is you guys divide it into 4 groups, and then you try to have interviews for a group, some people that you think is important for you to understand some particular sector of creative industry in Hong Kong. That's the idea. And then you do a presentation of more or less like half an hour, okay? Or maybe you need more. You can get 45 minutes or maybe half an hour in the last 2 sections of our tutorials. Okay, so more or less you still get 1.5 months to do that, or 2 months. Okay, I can arrange that according to the schedule. If you need more time, then we can negotiate. But my original plan is to do that at the last 2 weeks of our tutorial. So the last 2 weeks of April. And so you understand the idea. Okay, I want you to use the concepts that I taught you, and then you try to analyze how the actual operation of our creative industry in Hong Kong. And if you wish, you could pick other cases from other regions or countries, but then you have to tell me and let's discuss. Okay. Do you understand what's going on? What's going on? Okay. So for example, I can give you like an example. Like for example, um, I'm not using myself as an example. For example, maybe you are listening to some, I don't know, underground indie groups, okay, in Hong Kong. Maybe you love their music. Then you can for example, you can try to approach them for an interview and to ask them about how they, for example, how they create their songs, any funny stories behind the scene, and then talk more about into the operation of their industry. Okay, today, how could they finance themselves? Any tricks, and how that relate to our course. For example, how creativity operates in that sector. Is it helping or no? It's just limiting their room to where if they want to get popular, maybe they need to sacrifice some creativity or some production. I don't know. Okay, I want you to find such an example. For example, an underground music group, for example, and then to have an interview with them and talk about how they conduct how they conduct the production, how they create and using, and then you be up from interviews or first-hand investigation. You can also do some textual analysis. For example, use their songs, their productions, their concerts, and say and describe how they are and how they fit into the framework of creativity, and are they successful in being creative or not, and why is it the case, and try to use that kind of example to show why the structure and operations of our current creative industry in Hong Kong. And maybe you can also offer suggestions for how the industry can change, can amend, can evolve, and that helps us to have like overview of our creative industry. That's the idea. So pick a case, okay? Pick a case, and then do some research and do a presentation at the end of the semester. Okay. Do you have any problem concerning what's going on here? Do you guys understand? Do you guys understand the idea of the group project here? So I try to merge the presentation and the group project together. And I will tell you how the other part evolve. Okay, but that's the idea of the group project first, and have a presentation at the end of April. It's not you don't need to do something very fancy. Okay, you don't need to do something very fancy. I don't want to give you a very large pressure, because that's why I don't think you need to like use a lot of the time. Okay, I don't want to do that. Okay, I know it's just one of your courses. You got a lot of different courses. Okay, I don't want that to be a very large burden on you. Okay, so it's okay, right? You guys understand, right? No any question first here? Yes, then that's the other problem. How do we divide in groups? Um, at the start, at the beginning of the semester, I want to divide you guys into groups in tutorials, but I got no chance now because we don't have face-to-face lesson anymore, at least until the end of the March. But I guess it will be the case for the whole semester. I guess. Um, anyway, so maybe could we do that, like do it in the following way? I try to, I don't know whether you guys can have like discussion and form groups here. I try to I opened discussion for I have opened, I think, a discussion forum on Moodle, right? Am I correct? I think so. We have already a discussion platform on Moodle. And can you guys use that platform to form groups? Like, let me check. Okay. Of course, if you got, oh, why error? I got error. Anyway, but right, we got a discussion platform, right? Low sound. Yeah, you guys hear me? Good. Let me see. Yes, we got discussion forum for everyone. So maybe could we use that discussion forum for forming groups? Is it okay to use the discussion forums to form groups? Okay, so so I try to so you guys open some discussion threads there and to form groups yourselves within 1 week. Is it okay? It's not that difficult, I guess. If you already know some other students here, then you, of course, you can form groups with them. But otherwise, could you guys just use that forum to form groups? Is it okay? So maybe I don't know. I if you don't have preference, maybe I for example, because we need to form 4 groups, right? I try to open. I try to uh open an Excel there. Okay, open an Excel there, and then you guys try to, and I set up 4 different groups there, and then you guys just fill in your names and contact method. Okay, there in the Excel, so that and some other guys who get into the who can just fill up their name onto the Excel form, and then you guys can become the same group. Okay, is it better? Because in the past, I'm afraid some of you guys are like too shy from like getting a group like, actively. So maybe I set up a form there. So if you guys already know some students of your fellow classmates, you can fill in the forms together, and then you can form a group. Otherwise, I live there is some bands, so you can still fill in the name, and other people can join the same group by filling in the forms. Is it possible? It's okay. Would it be good? Yeah. Um. Yeah. So let's do it that way. It's okay. Okay. So 1 week. Okay, 1 week. I will set up a form there on the forum, so you can fill in the form there. Okay. Okay, good. And okay, good. So you guys can form groups there. Okay, let me do it. Let me do it. And that's it. Okay, so I understand some of you guys might be currently not in Hong Kong. Okay, may not but it's okay because I think even though you need to conduct any like investigation or like meeting up or interviews, maybe it would be better to conduct it online nowadays under the current situation. So let's see. And I understand if you don't, it's not possible or it's not convenient for you guys to have first-hand interview nowadays. So under the current situation, so it's okay if you just do some analysis case study, okay. But of course, it would be great if you can still have interviews or something like that. But otherwise, it's still good to do some case study without doing interviews. So that should be okay, right? Okay, so that's it. Okay, so the last 2 weeks will be the weeks of presentation. Okay, lovely. So let's continue our discussion on Foucault. Okay, before the break, we talked about the need for large prisons. Okay, because the rise of capitalism that gave rise to the need for locking up so many people. Okay, at the same time, and then we need jails of large scales. That we don't have that need before. Okay, we didn't have that need before, but suddenly we got that need. Okay, and within the large jails, we have to organize a lot. We have to manage a lot of people, a lot of people. In the past, we only had some very small jail, but now we had to like organize like a very large amount of people at the same time in one place, and that is never an easy task. Okay, that's never an easy task, especially all those prisoners are criminals. Okay, maybe not all, but most of the prisoners are criminals. So it's not easy to manage them. Okay, so we have to develop some technology of controlling people. Okay, and a very famous case is the idea of a panopticon. Okay, panopticon. Okay, panopticon is like this. Okay, okay, in the you see the photos, right? You see the photo. We got a jail. Okay, like a circle, and then we just have like observational tower of observation in the middle. Okay, why is it a very good way to act as an agile? Okay, it's an idea proposed by Jerry Bentham, a very famous English philosopher. Actually, no one actual panopticon has been what was really built. Okay, as far as I know. Okay, as far as I know, no panopticon has ever been built. Okay, but the idea is there. The idea was there. Why did Bentham propose such an idea? It's because we have to develop new technology of controlling a large amount of people at the same time. Okay, and you have first you got to be cost benefit. Okay, cost effective. Otherwise it's too costly. Okay, so you have to minimize the cost and to maximize the amount of people that you can manage. And panopticon is one of the solutions. Okay, so we can like observe, monitor a lot of people at the same time with just one tower in the middle. Okay, it's very cost effective. And actually, I would say more on that. Actually, it's even more cost effective because actually, even if there is no one in the tower of observation of monitor, even if there is no one in the monetary tower, the panopticon, this kind of prisons can still work. Why? It's because every prisoner can see almost every prisoner in such a setting. And so every prisoner is forever under observation and monitoring. Maybe not by a member of the staff, but by other prisoners. That's the very magical idea. Whenever we feel that we are under the sight of other people, we behave differently. It's not purely perfect, right? Whenever you think you are under the observation of other people, that is not important whether they're really observing you. Okay? Just the possibility that some others might be looking at you, that is already very important to control and to shift your behavior. Because you think might be someone is watching me, looking at me, and that's good enough to shape your behavior. And that's the idea of a panopticon. Okay, it's not only a member of the staff is looking at you. Other prisoners are also looking at you. At least it seems so. Okay, at least you feel the way. At least you feel so. Maybe no one is actually looking at you, but you still feel that someone is looking at you, and that's good enough to control your behavior. That's the brilliant idea of a panopticon. Okay, and besides for the lead of large jails, we also have the lead for large public schools. Okay, because we have the lead for skillful labor under the era of capitalism, and also we have the lead for large factory. Okay, the lead for large factory is no longer some small business under capitalism. It's some very large factory, and so also we lead to manage a lot of different people. Okay, and that kind of stuff. Okay, that kind of stuff help leads to the conclusion that there is a large demand. Okay, a very sharp demand for the technology of controlling a large amount of people at the same time. Maybe in the prisons, maybe in a public schools, maybe in large factory. And that kind of this stuff, okay, large prisons, large public schools, large factory were unheard of in the past, okay, in human history. It's just because of the rise of capitalism. Then we had the lead for such organization, okay, and that's why we developed a lot of technology of controlling people, and that's why Foucault would say it is not surprising at all. What it is not surprising at all that our schools and factory resembles a jail, okay, a prison, because they come from the same lead, okay? So they will learn each other, okay? They learn each other about how to control, how to manage such a large amount of people, okay? So it's just very sensical that the public schools and factory look like a jail. I don't know whether you have that feeling when you were school, okay? When you were in a school, okay, do you feel that you are in some sense in a prison, okay? Especially in the Eastern society, okay? You feel you are always under observation. You are always like the feeling of being a prisoner is like so large, okay, so big that sometimes you feel uncomfortable, okay? But it's nice. It's always important to emphasize that It's just a very strange moment that you feel strange, okay? You feel being in a prison. Because even for the prisoners, after all those years being a being in a prison, then you don't feel like being in a prison at all because, so to speak, using a very famous phrase in the frame of Shawshank Redemption, you got institutionalized, okay? You become part of the institute. You become part of the institution. You become part of the system. You got institutionalized, and you just then the system become the water when you were a fish, okay? When you were a fish, it's just the system become the water. Then you don't feel the water anymore, okay? So it's just normal that you don't feel strange in the school most of the time because you got institutionalized as well. But maybe at the first, when you got into a school, you suddenly feel, how come I got controlled? I was being observed. I was being punished. Okay, and 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 that's an idea that like a feeling that no one wants when at the beginning. Okay, but maybe afterwards you feel like, okay, I got used to it. Okay, and I will talk about how discipline is installed here. But I just want to summarize here a little bit. So you see Foucault's idea. Uh, there's a lot of different like unrelated and irrelevant lines of a sequence of events. Okay, happening in history. For example, the timetable of monarchy, how a monarchy organized their own lives, how the Persian armies got trained. Okay, the rise of capitalism that led to, for example, the need for large jails, the need for large public schools, the need for large factory. Okay, all of this, in a sense, are irrelevant and contingent in nature. Okay, it is just what happened. History can go the other way around, right? Because, for example, the first two is more office, of course. The first two are more office, of course. How the Persia trained their armies and how a monarchy organize their life according to a timetable, of course, is a very contingent matters. Okay, but even for something very large like the rise of capitalism, it is still very contingent, right? Actually, for most of the time of human history, we just don't have capitalism. Okay, even after civilization. Okay, after human got civilized. Okay, we got like quite as some thousand years without having the system of capitalism. Capitalism is a very recent thing, right? It has just like 300 years of history. So it's totally possible that capitalism didn't happen in our history. But as a matter of fact, of course, okay, it has arisen. And that's why we got capitalism. And after we got capitalism, then we got a lot of different things. Okay, the large jails, large public schools, large factory, and actually large cities. Okay, in the past we don't have the need for cities. Okay, we live in villages, and that's good enough. Okay, but if you want to have large scale of production, we have to have factory, and then that draws people to move from villages into the cities and to work as a worker in factories, and that create large cities, and that create a lot of crimes as well. And then we have a need for large jails, okay, that go into a vicious cycle. Okay, and all this irrelevant things, irrelevant sequence of events in human history suddenly will come together and give rise to our current worldview. For example, discipline is very important. Okay, it's something that we cannot challenge, and that kind of worldview, okay, it was actually owing to like due to a lot of different unrelated sequence of events in history. Okay, And that's contingent. So that shows our worldview in large part is also contingent. So we can change, okay? That's the idea of Foucault. We shouldn't regard our current worldview as something like necessary and absolute. And Foucault is very brilliant, actually. When he analyzed how that happens, of course, he talked about a lot of history, but he also tries to talk about how that power operate, how power operates itself, okay, how power operates in our daily lives, okay, how discipline is actually installed, okay. It's not simply by brute force, okay? It's not like I got my will, I got my free will, but then someone in power try to use brute force to control me, to force me, to coerce me to do something that I don't want to do. If power operates in that way, that's very costly. It has to overcome a lot of resistance, right? If I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that, do this, but then you force me to do that, to do this, then it's like very costly. They have to control you. They have to overcome your resistance, right? Um, so that's not how power operates, okay? When we look at the how a large jails operate, then we got a very insightful like thoughts. That's very inspiring, and that gives us the shed new light on how our current society operates. Foucault thinks there are three elements, okay, that are important in installing discipline onto our society. First, hierarchical observation. It's just like there's someone who who who, who is higher in the order of hierarchy that look upon you, okay, just like in a prison. There's some staff, some members of staff who try to manage the prison, and they have the right to observe you, to monitor you, and to punish you if you do something wrong. Okay, that's the first thing. Okay, hierarchical observation. Someone is looking at you. Okay, looking at you. Maybe they don't. At the end of the day, they don't even need to exercise that their right to punish you. They just it's always it, they just install a situation. They just set up a situation in which you are always observed. Okay, that's why in modern society, when there are so many CCTVs, you always got observed. Okay, you are always being observed by someone you don't know who. Okay, behind the camera. Okay, and And installing CCTV is actually a technique that is learned, okay, in a sense, from the management of a prisons, right? They try to always have someone looking at you, watching at you. And that's also the idea of a panopticon, okay? You're always being watched. The big brother is watching at you. You don't have the idea whether he's really here, okay? You don't really know whether someone is watching at you behind the CCTV, okay? Maybe the CCTV system is not working, maybe, but as long as that is the chance that is working, then you feel you are being watched, you are being observed, and then your behavior is being shaped, okay? You become disciplined, okay? That's the first element, observation. But then I think an even more important factor is the second one, normalization. Okay, normalization. When we say normalize, when we say normal, actually it's related to the norm, right? That's why we call normal. You act according to the norm, so you're normal. Okay, and in order to normalize you, we have to do a lot of different things. Okay, we it's very famous for Foucault to talk about how power operates. Okay. He has a particular term for that. The power he's describing is called micro power. Micro power. Micro power. Why is it micro? Okay, why is it micro? He's saying the most important type of power is not something that someone powerful held in hand. When we normally when we talk about power, we always think about government, big big businessmen, rich people, classy people who got a lot of like resource and power to impose things on us, to make us do something that we don't want to do, and that's what we call power in our daily life, right? Of course, it is power. Foucault never denied that, okay? But Foucault thinks that's not the true nature, the ultimate nature of power, okay? And the ultimate nature and the most important kind of power is what he calls the micro power. Micro power. Micro power is a network of influence among different people. Just like a net, okay? Just like a net. I always say, just like a net. Every one of us is a node in the net, okay? Gita, okay? The node in the net. So a node is connected to another node. We influence each other. When one node is moving, it will pull the other node. Okay, different node in the entire net will pull each other. Okay, and so when the net move, all the nodes are moving. Okay, it's just like a net. When we interact with each other, we impose our influence on other people, and that network is the power. That influence is how power operates. Okay, let me give you some very concrete daily life example. For example, when you see someone dressing weirdly in the public, for example, in the bus, when you see someone dressed very weirdly, how would you react? Huh? If there are, for example, if there are two seats in the bus, one is sits besides people who dress quote unquote normally, and other seat is a seat that's besides someone who dressed weirdly. Which seat would you pick? Okay, simple. I guess most of us will pick the seat besides someone who dressed normally, right? Quote unquote normally. That's normal, I think. Actually, maybe that's how human brain operates. Okay, but that has a very very bad effect on the people who want to dress like unlike the other people in the society. Okay, you have just exercised your power. Do you see that? It's a micro power. You just exercise your power. You maybe you are not a very powerful person. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're just a very small guy who got low says in how the society operates. So we don't have we don't have power in the traditional sense. But we all of us have power in this sense, in the sense of micro power. When we see someone who dressed not according to the norms of the society, then we are not going to sit beside him or her. And that is already a signal sent to that person. Do not dress like that because people find you weird, because people won't like you. So if you want to be liked, if you want not to be looked at with a strange gaze, then you have to dress up normally in a sense, according to the norm of the society. And that already put the pressure on the people, right? So even thinking back of yourself, most of us won't dare to dress very weirdly in the public, right? You feel shy, you feel uncomfortable because we have already been normalized in terms of how we dress, right? How we dress up. Uh, we have already been normalized because people will judge you. People will looking at you if you don't dress according to the norm. Let me give you another daily examples using some very local examples. Sorry, sorry. In Lunar New Year, okay? In Lunar New Year, in in the Chinese culture, we will like have family gathering, just like the Westerners gather themselves in Christmas, right? Um, during New Year, uh, we'll meet a lot of different family members. A lot of them are senior family members. Okay, they are older than you, and they have more respect. Okay, they earn more respect in their family than us. But then when we have to chat with each other, okay, we have to talk with each other. They often ask questions like, for example, what you are studying, okay, maybe in the university, and then they will ask how it relates to your future job. Huh? Now that's a that's a that's a question with a lot of pressure, right? And actually, it has a lot of presupposition. Huh? What it presupposes? What it presupposes? I have to ask when the family members, your relatives, ask you something like that. What are you studying in the university, and how it helps to in your future job? Well, it has a lot of presupposition, right? What it presupposes. And let's see some further questions. Maybe they will ask you whether you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, right? Huh? It is the case, particularly in Chinese context. Okay, they ask you about your relationship. Okay, do you have a boyfriend or girlfriend? Okay. When are you going to marry? When are you going to have babies? Where are you going to buy a flat? Love. Okay, buy an apartment. It is particularly the case in Hong Kong, I guess. They will ask you why you have become so fat. Have you ever met a relative who comment on your body shape, on how you look? Huh? That's all. That these are all very common questions and topics in our Lunar New Year gathering, right? I guess we all share such an experience in if you grew up in Chinese traditions, right? And that's of course the relatives or the family members ask you these questions not because they hate you, not because they try to attack you. They just care about you. I think that's true. Maybe sometimes they just need to have some talk and find some topics. But in most of the case, I guess they really care about you. They really care about you. They're really concerned with your well-being. And that's why they ask these kinds of questions. Okay. But the problem is when they ask this kind of question, they already presuppose a lot of norms behind the questions. When you ask what do you study and how it relates to your future job, it presupposes the idea that studying is for jobs, is for money. Okay, you study something only because it helps you to find a better job in the future. But that presupposition is not an eternal truth, right? It's not an absolute truth, right? Huh? But that already set up a norm. If you find yourself doing something, studying something that is unrelated to money, that doesn't help you get a better job in the future, you find yourself under pressure. The pressure is not only from outside, it also only from your inside part of you, okay? From the inside part of you, because you also become normalized and find it strange and weird and maybe not okay to study something that's economically unprofitable. Okay, that's the how it shaped you. The pressure is not a force you to study something that's economically profitable. It's a norm. They set up a norm, and then when you learn the norm, you become normalized, and then you find it strange from your deep inside, okay, and you change and you control your own behavior, okay. Your behavior change because you also find it quite strange to study something that is economically irrelevant, okay, and then you don't do that anymore, or maybe you don't do that at the start already. Huh? When they ask you whether you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, it presupposes having a boyfriend and girlfriend It's normal, and that's the norm. Huh? But why? Why should we? Why is it a must to have a boyfriend or girlfriend? Okay, not to mention, boyfriend. The division between boy and girl is also a norm. Okay, okay. Actually, there are a lot more different genders in the world. Okay, even biologically speaking. Okay, you can have XX as a girl, XY as a boy, or but there are people who got genes like XXY, XYY, okay, or XXX, for example. There are more than two genders, okay, but that kind of presupposition is presupposed behind the questions, okay. And then when they ask you when are you going to marry, it presupposes the fact that the idea that you have to marry, and people get a happy life only if they get married. Huh? That seems to be the norm. Huh? When they ask you when will you have baby, it seems having baby is the norm. Okay. When they ask you when are you going to buy a flat, it seems that buying a flat is the norm. Everyone have to do that, right? Everyone has to do that. Otherwise, you won't get a happy life. It seems to show you what a perfect, ideal happy life is. But they're just at the beginning, ask you some very small questions in a small talk. Okay. When they ask you why you become so fat, it means being fat is not okay. It's bad. Okay. These questions and set up and imply a norm that makes you feel you need to follow. And that operate in a very subtle way that you don't even feel its operation. Okay. It operates in a very subtle way. At the end of the day, that shape your soul, that shape your will, and we want to become normalized. It shapes our soul. It shapes our soul such that I don't even notice the existence of it, just like the water to the fish. Okay, but you have already been normalized, and you act according to the norm. Okay, so that's how power operates. Everyone is oppressing everyone. Actually, they try to shape the behavior of the others. Okay, and that's how power operates. Okay, so I haven't finished the all the Foucault's idea, but I think here is the central part of Foucault's, okay? How power operate. I think that is very inspiring, okay? And then you have to look back on yourself. Have you ever oppressed other people by setting up such kind of norms, okay? Are we part of the system? I think yes, okay? So we can have some refresh upon ourselves, okay? Anyway, I know I have overrun. Okay, so that's all for today. That's all for today. So I will set up an Excel form online. So you guys got to fill in the form and find your group mates. Okay. Okay. So So let's meet in the coming tutorial on Friday. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Bye bye guys.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye bye Pablo.